So welcome to our final presentation day. We always look forward to this, and I know it's fun for the providers just because you've worked with the students, at least Tricia has consistently, and then we've had different participation, and we really appreciate all three of you being here. It's always a thrill, I think, for the students to be able to show their wares today. And just to give you a sense of the format, they'll present for, I think it's about 35 minutes, something along those lines, and then we should have about a half hour for Q&A, and it really is just an opportunity for you to drill down on issues and really get whatever information you think you can. And we are gonna, once we do go through the presentation, we'll make it a little bit less formal and make it more of a round table, put the students here, and really make it a useful experience for you all. But we really do appreciate, this program started, I think, about 6 or 7 years ago under Dan Schnur, and it's really blossomed. And it's blossomed because of providers like you. It literally couldn't take place without people giving their time and effort. And we know how busy your office is. Crazy busy, right? So hopefully you'll hear information that is useful to you, and then we'll go into the Q&A from there.
Awesome.
All right, so at this point, we'll go ahead and turn it over to the team.
So welcome everyone. I want to thank Tricia, the partners, and Councilmember Bonin staff for taking the time out of their busy schedule to come listen to our recommendations. My name is Jocelyn, and these are our partners Simon, Jackie, Holly, and Kayla. And today we're going to focus on two communities in District 11, which are Westchester on your right-hand side, and then Del Rey on your left-hand side. Westchester is a much larger area, and I'm going to start by discussing both of these communities and then explain the community plan issues. Then my partner Simon will talk about transportation and parking in Westchester. Jackie will focus on safety issues in Westchester. Holly will focus on transportation and parking in Del Rey, and Kayla will discuss public safety in Del Rey. So we added public safety because with the addition of more housing, we think it's a vital factor that we should consider because it could bring unintended consequences. So our main research question is, what are the effects of the addition of affordable housing in high market areas like Westchester and Del Rey in relation to issues such as transportation, parking, and public safety for effective future land use and other related policies to adequately meet the concerns of the community plans. So as I mentioned, Westchester is a much larger area. It has a population of 48,000 residents as of 2008. The residential goes from low to high medium density. The median household is $717,090. The median household income is $80,000 per year. 53% are homeowners, 47% are renting, 16% are multifamily homes, 39% are single-family homes. There are 39,000 jobs available for these residents, and 36,000 people are in the workforce. The technology industry is large in this area, and it's mostly by the community by the LAX, since LAX is part of this community. The central transportation method is by car, but there's also other forms of public transportation. And as we see, the land use distribution is 9% public facilities, 9% industrial, 10% commercial, 16% multifamily, 20% open space, and 36% single family. Now on to Del Rey. So Del Rey has a population of 32,976 as of 2008. This is the most affordable community in District 11, and it is also the most diverse, but it has a low voter turnout. The median household income is $62,000 per year, and it's mostly low-density residential development, and 55% are renting in Del Rey. 73% are multifamily homes, and 27% are single-family homes. There are 25,000 jobs available, and 36,000 people are in the workforce. As in Westchester, automobile is the main transportation, but there's also other forms of public transportation. And as we see here, the land use distribution is 5% open space, 10% public facilities, 9% industrial, 6% commercial, 23% multifamily, and 48% single family homes. So now talking about transportation. So there is a shortage in other forms of transportation other than by car in both of these communities. In Westchester, traffic congestion is extremely present, and Westchester is only getting denser. This is because the 405, it is anchored by the 405 freeway, and the neighborhoods between Sepulveda and La Tijera, the neighborhood in the middle is caught in the middle between these two entrances, which causes more traffic congestion. And there's also a lot of cut-through traffic present in Westchester. And Del Rey, there's also a lot of congestion, but it's mainly from cars passing through, and because of development. There's also a shortage in transportation linkage between residential areas and commercial areas. So now on to housing. So Westchester and Del Rey, there is a need to maintain the low density of single-family neighborhoods, and also the homeless issue is present in both of these communities because of the high rise of the pricing in homes. In Westchester, there's a tension with the addition of more housing supplies because there is a fear that home values can decrease. In Del Rey, there's a homeless population issue along the 90 freeway in Bayona Creek that has increased in the neighborhood streets. So parking. So in both of these communities, there is a shortage of sufficient parking. In Westchester, residents are concerned with non-resident parking in residential areas or driveway blocking and public safety with parking. LAX and new businesses create also an issue because there's an adequate amount of parking available for people. There also, in Del Rey, parking is not equivalent to the number of people in housing units. So on to public safety. So Westchester and Del Rey hugely rely on the sufficient supply of police officers, firefighters, and other issues to ensure that the future and present population is safe. In Westchester, there is a need to modernize public facilities, and there is also community concerns with less police patrolling that could in turn disrupt traffic. In Del Rey, expanding open spaces like environmental expansion, libraries, and community centers is vital because it could decrease crime, And there's also concerns with bad infrastructures in sidewalks and in the lack of parks. So now my partner Simon will talk about transportation and parking in Westchester.
Hi, I'm Simon, and I'm going to be talking about transportation and parking in Westchester. So as Jocelyn said, that because Westchester is so close to LAX, there's a high pass-through traffic in it, which causes high traffic speeds and heavy congestions. And the lack of adequate transportation alternatives results in reliance in private automobiles, which also decrease the parking availability. So some of the solutions I came up with is that we should eliminate mandatory parking minimums in the area, enact transportation demand management program, which I will be talking about later, and redesign streets to accommodate all modes of transportation. So mandatory minimum parking is a set of planning codes that require developments to build 1.5 to 2.5 parking spots per unit in the area, and eliminating this requirement will allow developers to not have to build these spots, which will also decrease the amount of cars in the area. And this elimination will allow developers to not have to build these cars, which will decrease development costs because renters actually pay 16% more on rent because of these parking spots, regardless of if they use it or not. It will also have a minimal impact because of the parking shortage, because developers have the option to build the parking spots, which is usually based on market demand. The Transportation Demand Management Program forces new developments to accommodate features that encourage other modes of transportation. So this program forces the developers to reach a number of points before they get approved by the city, and they get those points by incorporating certain features such as bike parking, car sharing parking, and real-time transportation displays in the lobbies. San Francisco enacted this in 2014, and it forced developments to adhere to these guidelines. Even though it's too soon to see the impacts of it, the new developments are more transit-friendly and provide important infrastructure for biking and parking and public transportation. Finally, We should redesign streets to accommodate other modes of transportation so that it's not only focusing on private automobiles. We should have protected bike lanes on busy streets without reducing the number of lanes, prioritizing pedestrians with pedestrian islands, traffic light algorithm, and street design. So I will be focusing on Sepulveda Avenue because it sees the most traffic during the morning period, and it is the orange vertical line on the map. This is a picture of Sepulveda Avenue, and below it is a diagram of the changes I would like to see. So currently it has 3 lanes of traffic going each side, but looking at the diagram in the bottom right-hand corner, we can see how each lane should be dedicated. By narrowing each lane, we can include a bike-only lane that is protected by greenery from oncoming traffic. Also, we will also keep all three lanes for ongoing traffic, but with the last lane dedicated to a transit-only lane that will be only in effect during peak hours, such as the morning. We should also replace the turning-only lanes with pedestrian refugee islands in busier intersections to protect pedestrian safety and to facilitate private automobiles. So on to intersections. We should create safer intersections to increase safety for pedestrians. We should, as I talked about, we should have pedestrian refugee islands, which are waiting areas to finish longer intersections, which will really help the disabled. And we should also have high visibility crosswalk markings so cars can see where the pedestrian areas are. We should also have sidewalk Koerting extensions, which will decrease the walking distance and create safer turns because cars have to make a sharper angle, which means that they go slower. And Jackie will be talking about public safety in Westchester.
So while public safety is not a traditional aspect of the community plan update, due to the community members' constant concern of lack of public safety and also the high crime rate, we thought it was imperative to add our recommendations. And as you can see, over the last 6 months, there has been 80 violent crimes, 1,101 property crimes, and 278.6 crimes per 1,000 people. And this is a much higher crime rate than its neighboring communities, including communities like Ladera Heights, Playa Vista, Playa Del Rey, and Hyde Park. Broken down even further, you could see that most crimes that happen in Westchester are property crimes, and more specifically, theft and theft from vehicle. The solutions that we propose are security cameras and increasing social integration between community members. And studies have found that police, policymakers, and others involved in criminal justice view cameras as a useful tool for preventing crimes, aiding an arrest, and supporting investigations or prosecutions. And this is especially important to the community of Westchester because, as we just saw, most crimes that happen in Westchester are property crimes, and security cameras are supposed to help decrease the rate of property crimes the most. Also, a study found that social integration lowers fears of crime and feelings of vulnerability, and this is especially relevant to Westchester because the community members have expressed to us that they don't feel safe in their community, and as more people start to move into this area, we want them to feel safe in their home. So we're going to look at a study done by the Urban Institute, and they studied the effects of security cameras on 3 cities, Baltimore, Chicago, and Washington. And in Baltimore, they found that there was a decrease in crime rate and no crime displacement in all of the areas that security cameras were installed. And in Chicago, there was a decreased crime rate in half of the areas where security cameras were installed. And in Washington, D.C., there was no noticeable difference because the public did not receive it very well. But overall, security cameras are a helpful tool for crime control and holds a lot of potential in public safety. Findings, so if we look at the cost-benefit analysis of the cities, they actually saved more money than they spent. And also increasing social integration between community members is supposed to decrease their community members' fear of vulnerability. So the first recommendation that we have is to revive public space, and this can be done by simply adding furniture, benches, or mats in our already public space. So these are some photos of the Westchester Recreation Center, and even the areas outside of the field areas, there is some room for some potential more picnic tables or benches so that more people can be encouraged to come to these areas. These are some photos of Will Rogers Street, which is behind Carl E. Nelson Youth Park and the LAX parking lot. And as you can see, the sidewalks, they're very clean, and there's a wide green area next to it where this could be a potential area of public space if maybe a couple picnic tables or benches were added so people can come eat their lunch or take a walk and sit on the bench when they get tired. And another option to increase social integration can be a neighborhood watch alternative called Project Alert. And Project Alert has been integrated in Longmont, Colorado, and what it does is it emphasizes creating a safer and more collaborative neighborhood by getting the residents to get to know each other better. And this is done through city-held events such as park cleanups, neighborhood walks, and even classes that teach residents how to work collaboratively to build stronger neighborhoods. And when the city has events like this, it encourages residents to get to know each other and actually provides a platform where they can do that. The last solution is to assist residents to foster a clean community, and having a lawn, garden hoses, shrubs, even yard trees have strongly indicated a decrease in crime rate, while on the other hand, small trees, uncut lawns, or dried out lawn have actually indicated an increase in crime rate. And this is actually a photo of a house in Westchester, and on this street, actually a burglary did happen, so encouraging residents to take care of their lawns may help decrease the crime rate. And a suggestion to incentivize residents to do this can be to find residents who consistently don't take care of their yards. And now Holly will be telling you guys about parking and transportation in Del Rey.
As Jocelyn, I think, hinted to earlier, the demographics in Del Rey are very similar to those that are in LA as a whole. So our hope with this information is that anything that is implemented and is successful in Del Rey could also be implemented on a larger scale for all of LA later on in time. So, and as you can see over there, I mean, those are like the actual demographics of both areas. All right, so like much of Los Angeles, there's a parking shortage in Del Rey, and the installation of new housing units would require more parking. Someone mentioned earlier that there's a statewide regulation that says that you need at least 1.5 to 2.5 spaces per unit of housing. But an area like Del Rey doesn't have a whole lot of space to make that work. So I looked at a few solutions. All right. So the ones listed here are not exactly the best for Del Rey because we don't really have the space or the means in order to rezone and replace existing structures with parking structures or increase street parking. So to redevelop and rezone would lead to losing what so many Del Reyans want in their neighborhood, which is more open space and not a whole lot of space that is either already developed or paved over. Structures are extremely expensive and actually not extremely cost effective and would raise the price of housing. Plus you would have to find a way to fairly allocate the spaces to the residents. Street parking would decrease the amount of space on the street, which would increase the amount of traffic congestion on both the main roads and the local roads, which no one ever wants, and it contributes to more emissions and longer times in between two locations. So overall, there is an overarching drawback to adding more parking for that is available to residents, and that is with more parking that is available, more people will actually drive, which contributes to the large amount of congestion in the area. So my suggestion is to actually reduce the amount of parking needed by increasing the amount of public transportation that is available within the community. So cars are the primary form of transportation within Del Rey at the moment. There are 2 bus routes. One is on this north end on Washington Boulevard, and the other is through Culver Boulevard. And I think if we were able to connect those and some of the more residential areas with commercial areas using microtransit and maybe improving the bicycle infrastructure, we would see a lot more ridership on both of those and really connect the residents to other parts. So, first, microtransit. I was envisioning something similar to the Surf City Shuttle that's in Huntington Beach, which stays within in the community limits, but it takes residents from a few stops around their neighborhoods to more commercialized areas, including like the beach and more like downtown. Shuttles like this require less parking, create less road congestion, and reduce emissions. There is a pilot program that is starting soon in Del Rey and really the west side of LA, which will take which people will be able to call one of about 6 or 8 vehicles to pick them up and take them somewhere within the limits. So that is being worked on. Okay. So biking infrastructure, if that were improved, both the availability of bikes and like the roads and the trails that are traveled on, we would see a lot more ridership. And so at the moment, there are 2 major Class 1 bike trails. One is along Bayona Creek, and then one is Boulevard. And Class 1 just means that they are like more protected from cars on the street than, you know, just like the little arrow that says there are bikes here. So my suggestion is to clean up the roads that connect those 2 paths and also add more that would connect some of the more larger roads that would allow people to get around a little bit more easier. Fixing divots and planting more trees would also increase ridership. And actually Kayla will talk about a few more benefits of trees in a few minutes. Another important aspect of increasing ridership, though, would be to increase the amount of the access to them. So putting in like more bike share locations and stuff like that would be really beneficial. And now Kayla will talk about public safety in Del Rey.
So I wanted to start off with a quote from a resident of Del Rey, and he actually owns a small business within Del Rey. He's an architect, and he's also a community land activist. And he says that it would be the single reason why we leave Del Rey because we were tired of hearing gunfire in the gardens. And I thought this was just kind of a really powerful way to start out and to show you guys that public safety is a really important issue within Del Rey. And so I have some statistics. And so between March 5th, 2018 and September 2nd, 2018, there were 38 violent crimes, 332 property crimes, and 112.2 crimes for 10,000 people. And with the increased population growth that we'll see in the coming years with added affordable housing, there's also a possibility of increased crime, and we really want to make sure that with an increased population growth, we're keeping the residents safe and so that they can live a happy life. And so there's also gang activity within Del Rey between the Culver Street Boys, the Venice 13, and the Venice Shoreline Crips, and that is centered kind of around the Mar Vista Gardens area. And so my proposed solution is urban trees and CEPTED principles. And CEPTED is crime prevention through environmental design. And so I'm going to be focusing on a study done in 2012 in Baltimore City in Baltimore County, Maryland. And we're only going to be focusing on 3 of the 4 principles of CEPTED. And the reason is we're not going to be focusing on natural access control. And the reason is because that's more about keeping people out of spaces, of areas where you want to make sure that you protect that land, keeping people out of it so no crime occurs. But we're actually going to be focusing on natural surveillance, territorial reinforcement, and maintenance. And so the first one is going to be natural surveillance. So criminals want to hide and escape. And so also paved areas with no vegetation, they kind of discourage residential interaction and they reduce the eyes on the street. Meaning that if less people want to leave their house because the outside is not a place they want to be and hang out, criminals will have a place to hide and they'll have a place to escape and not be seen. The second one we'll talk about is the Territorial Reinforcement, and when you add the urban canopy, residents will have a sense of ownership over their environment, and they will notice people and changes in their environment and actions that don't belong. And on top of that, intruders can't blend in. And then the third one we'll talk about is maintenance, where well-maintained greenery signals a cue to care in an environment, and it shows that the residents of that environment are actively caring about and are involved with that environment. And it's kind of consistent with the broken window theory, which states that if there's neglect or poor maintenance of an area, it's more likely to increase crime in that area because it shows a lack of good public safety in that, or good public safety measures in that area, effective law enforcement. And so I'm going to talk about the urban canopy benefits and adding and increasing this urban canopy within Del Rey. And so the study I focused on was done in 2012, like I said, in Baltimore City and County. And they found a 20% decrease in crime for a 10% increase in tree canopy in the area. And beyond this, these findings were still valid even after controlling for socioeconomic variables such as income, housing age, race, housing type, population density, and things like that. So this shows that there is a possibility that this can work in Del Rey because they did control for those variables. And so, second, these urban trees are great multitaskers. And what I mean by this is trees, everyone likes trees. Del Reyans are really interested in their environment and their community. And they also provide aesthetics and temperature regulation and stormwater processing that are beneficial to the community. Beyond this, the urban canopy connects to other citywide goals such as real estate, economic development, public works, public health, and parks agencies. And it connects to this larger trend of urban sustainability that Los Angeles holds dear. And so the current LA goals for open space right now are that 50% of all residents should be within a 1/4 of a mile of walk of a park or open space area. So basically what I'm saying is, even if these trees don't lower crime like we want them to, there are all these other good benefits, so it's not a bad investment to increase these open spaces for the Del Rey community. And so now we're going to talk about where it works and where it doesn't. So the most effective spaces are going to be public lands such as parks and open space, and the least effective are going to be interface zones between industrial and residential areas. And actually, these interface zones or the in-between zones can actually be harmful to the environment, and they can actually raise the crime rates. So one example of this in Del Rey where it won't work is going to be the Via Marina Marketplace Mall. And so this is a map from 2012, it's just the crime blitz, and this is going to be the Via Marina Marketplace Mall. This area is all zoned for industrial use, and this area is all zoned for residential use. And as you can see, there's a big blip right about there. And what I'm recommending, increasing this open space, in the trees, won't work in this area, and the reason being is that's going to be involved with more of that natural access control that we're not talking about, where we want to keep people out. We want to make sure that when people do go into this mall, they're being funneled in a way that they're not in secret places. And we also want to make sure that there's no unmanaged greenery, no man's zones in that area. So it won't work there, but I will give you an example of where it will work. And so this is once again the 2012 crime lit map in Del Rey, but it's a different area. And so this is going to be Mar Vista Gardens. It is a housing complex within Del Rey, and it is the home of the Culver City Boys, which is a gang within Del Rey. And so this right here is going to be the Bayona Creek, which is protected open space within Del Rey. And like we said before, those protected open spaces are good for this increase in tree canopy. And so I'm also going to bring your attention to Inglewood Boulevard, which is right here. And as you can see, there are no crime blips in that area. So we're going to do a quick comparison between Inglewood Boulevard and this area next to Bayona Creek. As you can see, there's obvious differences. One is green, one is not. And first of all, that natural surveillance we were talking about, This area kind of discourages the residential interaction, and if we were to add trees and to add more green space, it would encourage the residential interaction. There's low territorial reinforcement. People feel ownership of Inglewood Boulevard because it's nice to be around, and I kind of recommend that that's what we should do around Iona Creek. And then beyond that, the maintenance, it signals a cue to care around Inglewood Boulevard. And that's why we see those crime blips. I mean, there are other reasons, but that's one of the reasons that we see those crime blips. So in conclusion, I'm just gonna go over what everyone said. So for parking and transportation, we want to eliminate mandatory parking, enact the transportation demand management program, and redesign streets to accommodate other modes of transportation. We'd also like to implement the use of microtransit and encourage bike usage within the communities. And for public safety, we'd like to foster a strong sense of safety and well-being through the use of security cameras, social integration, and cleaner neighborhoods. And then we'd also like to plan with local law enforcement to effectively place the urban canopy using SEPTED principles to reduce crime and increase public open spaces. Thank you guys so much for listening to us.
All right, guys, why don't you come on down, grab a seat, and then we have plenty of time for Q&A, so we'll get some engagement going on here. Certainly, yes.
We'll grab some cookies.
Now they can breathe and...
Good job, guys.
Yeah. So as always, we typically defer to the partners, so we're not overly structured here. We'll start with you guys, and then just sort of whenever you ask questions, just make sure you direct it to whoever you'd like to direct it to.
Great. Well, first I will say thank you for all of the work that you have done for this. From the first time that we met till now, it is absolutely clear that you have done an incredible amount of work and had some really interesting thinking around these issues. So I appreciate that. I think we all appreciate that a lot. Knowing the topics that you covered and knowing the colleagues that I'm here with, I'll actually completely open it up to the two of you. To give a little bit of background, I think you've met Eric before, and he's our Transportation Policy Director. And some of you may have spoken with Chewy directly, but he is our Del Rey field deputy and actually has a long history in Del Rey, and I think could speak in a lot of detail about our Vista Gardens. So I'm very interested in hearing what threads they would like to pull on with the points that and recommendations that you were making, and then I'll do what I always do and interrupt and ask questions.
That's perfect.
Because that's just how this works. So I let either of you feel free to kick it off with questions or things that you want to dig deeper on.
Yeah, so like a lot of the ideas that you brought up, like for instance, the security cameras, that's something that the community members have wanted to do for a while, especially along Slauson, where you saw that stretch that was where it's just blue. I think there's a lot of bureaucratic stops that has prevented that. We have funds allocated towards it, $22,000, and it's just not enough for the maintenance of the cameras there. So I thought that was interesting that that was something that you found that it would actually increase crime there, and
cost beneficial.
I think the challenges that we have there is just the maintenance of it, and then who, having LAPD or who will be the resources to be able to oversee the footage from those cameras.
Well, I think that leads to a question based on your research. In other cities that have done it, did you get a sense of how those programs are actually managed?
Yeah, so they worked best in Baltimore, where it was managed by trained officials. And so a suggestion from that study was to properly train the law enforcement and lawyers on how to use the footage for prosecution, and also to put into factor technological updates, because a problem that they had was that the security cameras footage, they were updating really fast because technology, and they needed to take that into account too.
Interesting. You mentioned something was in the presentation, so about the different cities that tried the security cameras, that there was poor reception for it in Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit more about what led to that?
It was because they didn't talk to the community members at all before they were in, like, they didn't even talk to the mayor. So it was just...
Who installed them, do you know?
It was a study done by the Urban Institute,
Okay.
so I don't know if, like, who exactly installed it, but I know that a suggestion that they had was to involve the community members and let them know, ask them where they want it and where they don't want it,
Right.
and to involve, like, city members as well.
Has there been any, you know, I mean, you think about these cameras are expensive. Do cities use dummy cameras at all? I mean, I'm not suggesting all of them are dummy cameras, but what happens if half of them are? Then you're gonna half the cost. Like, a big part of the big, I just wonder is, you know, a lot of it is just, oh, there's a camera, I can't go commit crime.
Right.
If everyone learns they're all dummy cameras, then obviously that, you know. But I just wonder if that's used at all.
Roulette,
Oh.
one real.
Right, yeah.
Don't do it.
And we just move it around.
Yeah, rotating one real.
I mean, I don't know, maybe that's not realistic.
Well, that's something that we're actually discussing in Playa Vista. There's an area that's along the bluffs where there's a lot of, it belongs to Playa Vista, Playa Capital, and there's a lot of trespassing that occurs there. And a lot of the residents that live on top are complaining about the trespassers who do a lot of illicit activities at times. And they were talking about putting dummy cameras, and then I think there was something legally where you have to actually, you know, put some kind of signage that says you may be filmed.
I looked.
But even better, right? It's a dummy camera.
Right.
Put up a sign and you're selling it.
And then the Palms, so when I was in C5, there was issues with privacy. And that's something that sort of stalled.
Can't have your cake and eat it too.
Yeah.
And just for anybody who doesn't speak city shorthand, CD5 is Council District 5.
Sorry.
We all refer ourselves by numbers. And that is the area that includes like Bel Air and Westwood and Palms and that quarter around UCLA.
And I wonder if that invasion of privacy, like, atmosphere would change at all across socioeconomic boundaries, you know? So that would be another interesting, I don't know if there's any studies out there about that.
I looked into the dummy cameras, like I digged so deep to see if cities actually used it, but I couldn't find any like city usage. I found stuff on homeowners using dummy cameras, but I couldn't find a city that actually implemented it.
I think a point Stacy made that, did you see anything in your research that indicated more or less receptivity based on the types of neighborhoods that the cameras were being put in? So I'm thinking an example in our area would be, how receptive would people in, say, the Pacific Palisades be to have cameras up versus Mar Vista Gardens? And, you know, I would take, you know, I would have my own guess about how they would be received, but did you see?
They mostly implemented them into like park areas, so I didn't look too deep into what kind of housing or like socioeconomic standards, but it was all public areas that they put them in.
Okay. And lest we stay too far on, or too long on camera. Any other questions? I did, just looking at my notes, I really liked the idea of using amenities to encourage public interaction as a public safety tool. I thought that was a really interesting approach. And would like to hear a little bit more about that. Like what, I know some amenities were mentioned, like benches and picnic tables. But you know, is there, like, what additional thinking around that? You know, are there some best practices that you saw in that research to see what kinds of public spaces were most effective in encouraging interaction?
I didn't, because I looked into the study that was like decreasing fear and vulnerability, and in order to connect that, I also did other research on how to revive public space. So adding amenities, it was a solution for how to revive public space, but there wasn't another like city that did it specifically.
Okay.
And then I know you did some research on that too, right?
Yeah. Well, I didn't do a lot of research on like what types of amenities, encourage residential interaction. I mostly was focusing on that urban canopy and increasing the residential interaction. But that also includes parks. If there are parks in the areas, I'm not sure about the benches and things like that. But if there are parks in the areas, it'll encourage people to get out of their house and really be involved with their environment. I love
Tree theory.
It's not a theory, it works.
Just on that note, were you able to get, and if not, no worries, but talk to residents about their opinion of the, what did you call it, SEPTED?
I wasn't able to talk to them about the accepted principles, but those principles are kind of, they're kind of accepted principles, and there's like whole strings on them. It's not just like one website or anything, it's just kind of a concept of that crime prevention through urban planning, environmental design. Yeah.
Well, and knowing how, in particular, obviously I know our constituent communities better than just in general, but knowing how they tend to interact with issues like that, if you asked for comments on the larger principle of SEPTED, principle implementation, you'd get very little feedback, but if you asked, do you want more trees on this street?
Right.
You would get a litany of opinions.
Or what are your thoughts about cameras on the street, right? Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's one thing I did want to say is that when I did talk to residents and when I went to the meetings and everything, that was in Del Rey specifically, that was one thing that was constantly brought up is we want more open space, we want more parks, we want more.
Oh, that's what I was asking, sorry.
Oh, that's what you're asking.
Yeah.
So the people, and even the one person I had that really long conversation with, he was basically saying we want to be able to stay in Del Rey when we want to go to the park and love our environment.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know.
Yeah.
As a resident of the area, I like to apply a Del Rey. But I think one of the things that I think, at least in my small community, that has really gotten people out and has created just a ton of social cohesion in our small neighborhood is the fact that Jet Pets, which is a local business, has opened up their huge yard for free dog run.
Oh, cool.
And so any open space that's owned that I think that can let dogs in a fenced-in way, and it's not a dog park.
Right.
Like, it's a place people go to walk, to play with their kids, but dogs can also run free. There's also something in El Segundo that's similar. And I think that as just like an open space that feels much more like backyardy or just like open, as opposed to like I'm going to the explicit dog park, has been really, really great for our community. And it's just its own, it's its own organization that's just opened it up to the community, and that was a really neat offering.
So we're actually doing that in Del Rey. There's Glenelg Park, and I saw some photos of it. Doing a dog park there, and the design of it is strategic because we're trying to implement the dog running areas in areas that are a little bit more conducive to some
Negative activity.
Yes.
That's awesome.
And
Yeah.
to reclaim some negative space.
Yeah,
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Because otherwise, it's just like a big weedy patch with a cement road, but everybody goes and hangs out there.
Yeah, and there is a few residents too. Have you seen what is that park called? It's right adjacent to the Banana Creek. There's a new one that just popped.
I haven't seen that one.
Milton Wing Street. So Milton Park. So a lot of the residents, and I wish we had your presentation beforehand, because the big concern there was that the park would invite transients into the area, because they would sort of associate certain parks with homeless individuals living in the parks and stuff. And so we could have used your slides for representation.
Yeah.
Just everything. And it hasn't been an issue either, so.
I suspect there may be some transportation related thoughts to share.
You guys covered a lot, and I think it's very much in line with the things that we're thinking of. So I'm very interested to hear the public safety side that I don't get to deal with as much. I think that there's things that are kind of interesting, like the TDM ordinance is something we're actively working on. So we'll hopefully be adopting it early next year. So right on. I think the parking minimums piece is where it gets tricky, because you have we're in this step 22 where a lot of housing in LA is overcrowded because we don't build enough housing units, which means that more adults that own cars live in each unit. unit, which then means that we have a parking shortage, which then means people associate parking shortage, we need more parking, so we raise parking minimums, which then raises the cost of new construction, which then means we build less housing, which then means we end up more overcrowded. And so you have this thing where
That's a long breath.
but there's basically a total lack of faith that reducing parking minimums can actually help the situation rather than make it worse. And like, it's just that's a nut that Los Angeles collectively has not cracked. I know San Francisco is considering just eliminating citywide like next week. So like other cities are definitely having that conversation.
Are there other cities that have done it?
Santa Monica has done it in 2017.
Okay.
Yeah.
Eliminated it entirely?
I think it's only in one certain portion of Santa Monica, but it hasn't had any short-term effects yet, so we'll see those about the winter ones.
I think it's in downtown, but in Santa Monica, because they have the public parking structures, they're able to, I don't want to say get away with a lot of other things, but what I like about the way Santa Monica manages parking in downtown, because they have the public structures, they can implement public policy to manage parking in that neighborhood because they own the public resource, whereas in Los Angeles, our parking policy is very privatized, where we expect every land use to be self-contained. And because of that, like all of the cool things you can do with parking is more about how can we share parking as a communal resource and manage it collectively. And we just don't have a lot of those same policy tools, and we don't have a lot of money just to throw at parking garages in the neighborhoods either. So you kind of get in this chicken or egg where our primary parking investment mechanisms are compelling private development to build parking, instead of figuring out how can we invest in public resources and then manage them appropriately. So that's a hard one.
So on the parking scarcity issue, just to like take a step back, the conclusion was that in both communities, parking was scarce. What led to that conclusion? What does that mean? Who's lacking in parking? Who felt like they were being underserved by parking?
I think as we were looking into like increase in housing, we're taking into account that most people will have their own vehicles, and therefore as more housing goes up, more parking will need to go in.
Okay.
And it really doesn't have a lot of space to necessarily be working with that isn't already like used by something.
Right. And because I think that's a fair conclusion about how people perceive those two neighborhoods. There was coincidentally, there was another USC student project, another program, another professor, don't worry, we love you too.
We're not offended yet.
But one of the things that team did was to look at was to interview people in Westchester about the potential, how receptive they would be to additional development in the future, because that's always a challenge on the west side, right? People just don't want any development because of fill in the blank issue. It's usually congestion, cost, traffic, you name it, right? And that team couldn't even get to the bigger question of what people would be willing or interested in seeing, because people in the community, in the Westchester community, were so focused on the current lack of parking and wouldn't even engage further. Like, no, until we solve this problem, we don't want anything else. Like, we can't handle anything else. And so it's interesting to hear those conclusions reinforced. I think it's something that we've heard plenty of times, but to have you guys get to the same conclusion. And I think an interesting, like, I liked how you set up the Del Rey problem, right? Was there's a whole bunch of solutions you could use and none of them are gonna work here.
I thought that was actually a really unique way to start. With the title, Del Rey Screwed.
Hashtag no more parking. But the thinking around it is, so then what are you left with? Either an intractable problem, or you've got to get people to not need parking.
Yeah,
or
we
they
made a joke
perceive
very
it.
early on in the
Yeah.
research that like if they move in, they can't bring their car.
Yes.
Stay outside of the community.
I was curious about their bike lanes. Would you all talk about that? Because I know it's kind of a contentious issue.
Yes, I was thinking when you said you were a resident of Lower Playa Del Rey that the issue that got everyone to congeal about something. I wasn't thinking it
You know, yeah. I was on the other end of that though. You know, I was really for it. I think it was a really positive development for the community, and I was very frustrated with taxpayer dollars going to put it in and then take it out just so the Manhattan Beach folk could commute through my town more easily. Boy, was I mad. But I was on the opposite end of most of my, but I also commute the other way. I take the 105, so.
Well, let's just say that you were not alone in your feelings.
Yeah, but I was, I think, a minority of the community.
I think you were a minority of the community that was paying attention.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people don't notice those types of changes if they don't directly impact their morning
Right,
commute,
right,
So
exactly.
then you're like, oh cool, there's more parking. I thought
No, but I swear, it was the Manhattan Beach folks driving up and picketing outside the show. 100%.
And
It was.
a lot of that negativity also pushed folks that didn't like it and sort of fed that energy there as well.
Yeah, yeah. No, and it was so much safer with all the parking along the beach. It was, don't even. I was so sad to see it go, yeah.
But given that context for bike lanes, yeah.
I mean, a lot of, what we've been working on more recently has been very much the north-south connectivity, recognizing that the bike paths form really strong east-west connections. So that's exactly the way that we're thinking. And then thinking through, it probably isn't like doing a road diet on Centinela, because that doesn't make a lot of sense. We literally just widened it to accommodate Playa Vista. But Del Rey has a very strong street grid that is broken in a couple of places. And each place where it's broken is an opportunity, because that means you have a lot of north-south streets that have low traffic volumes. They just don't go through. And so if you can make them go through, but only for bikes and peds and scooters and all of the micro-mobility type stuff, then suddenly you have very low stress environment with really great connectivity that doesn't require a lot of the difficult trade-offs associated with most bike infrastructure. And it's just literally making a couple of connections, making sure that this neighborhood street actually has a signal where you can cross kind of Culver Boulevard. So one of the things we were looking at is Culver and Slauson, and it was on a couple of your maps. Slauson, south of Culver, it's missing a traffic light that we're installing in a matter of weeks. And then when you go north, it turns into McLaughlin, and it goes all the way up into Mar Vista and further up into Redwood and what have you. Like, that is an awesome corridor because there are natural breaks for cars, and so it's relatively low traffic. So that's just like a win-win for everybody. So those are the types of proposals that we're trying to figure out, but the barriers are basically each of the east-west arterials, making sure the crossings are signalized. And the creek, ironically, it's great if you're traveling along the creek, but there are only so many bridges across the creek. So if you want to get across it, you either have to repurpose space on a bridge, or you have to build a new bridge. And those are things that get expensive. But we're sort of trying to figure out what are the most cost-effective ways to deal with those particular things.
Is CD11 a proponent of the ride-share scooter economy?
We were, I think we were a very strong proponent of responsible regulation of the new devices. I think, yeah. You can tell I've given that response. No, we effectively wrote the rules for them. And so the companies are all in the process of getting permits. Jump was the first and only so far, but the other ones we're expecting to get permits in a matter of weeks. And that should clean up a lot of the blight and bad behavior associated with the companies.
And we've noticed a huge amount of change too. If when initially Bird was rolled out, you just saw them all over the place.
Yeah. In piles.
Yeah, and then now you have, it's systematic now. It's just every corner has a place where there's still access.
Yeah, and it's a work in progress and it's continued to be, but I think what we've been seeing is that there is a whole untapped market of people that are looking for things that are not hard to get around.
Yeah.
But they still provide the same point-to-point flexibility that a car does. Because I think that's the problem with transit, is like the West Side, it's not like downtown LA where a lot of people come in and come out. A lot of people come in and out of the West Side generally for commuting, but within the West Side there are a lot of different centers and a lot of randomized travel patterns. And we have a transit grid, but it's hard to navigate a little bit. And there's just a lot of 3 to 5 mile point-to-point trips that are perfect for that type of device, and people are using them. So it's good.
Does it create an issue with parking though? Because then people are leaving their cars on the street and not moving them out. Is that a weird question?
I think what we haven't seen, and I'll tee on that to go in a slightly in a related direction to one of the ideas in the presentation, which is a lot of the circulator services and the scooter services, and like those are the things where we can layer them on each other. The question I think that you're asking is, at what point does that cause somebody to then not have a car? Because all of the things that we're doing allow people to leave their car at home, but if that car is on the street in their neighborhood, they still have to rotate it for street sweeping. They still have the same number of cars that are parked.
And the same lack of parking.
Right, and so I think that's the sweet spot that we're trying to figure out, is what is it that allows people to either not buy their car or get rid of the car that they have, and not utilize that parking resource.
Amount of traffic.
Yeah.
Well, and then I think back to some of the work that you were doing on ideas around reducing demand. In any of your research, did you see anything that pointed in the direction of disincentivizing car ownership versus just disincentivizing car usage?
I primarily saw just car usage, not really car ownership.
And then sort of related to the question of reducing demand. Did you look at any, some of the recommendations were around encouraging alternative transportation through amenities or infrastructure like bike lanes and things like that to make it easier to participate in that active transportation. Did you come across anything or give any thought around the land use patterns that would encourage you doing something other than getting in your car?
So that was something that I tried to look into, is more about the land usage in Del Rey itself. A lot of it seemed to already be developed, and therefore I really didn't know enough about how to change land usage, has already been established.
So in looking at that though, did you think that if you were able to change it, that there were changes that would make sense based on the way things have developed?
Yeah, I saw. Okay. I just don't think I was knowledgeable enough about land use within the area. There are certain roads that just didn't go through.
Right.
I thought connecting some of the larger roads from other trails would make a lot of sense, but there were certain areas that that's not necessarily feasible.
No, and it's a fair point. People make entire careers out of figuring out how to do things.
Just hoping she had the answer.
I mean, in reality, you need to do things that enhance the ability for people to do something other than get in their car. You need to make it attractive. You need to plant trees. You need to bike lanes, places that you're allowed to have scooters and access to them, and all of that. And then the other component is you need to look at how your land use is organized to see if you really should be rethinking where your industrial is, where your single family is, where your multifamily is. And that the issues that your team was focused on are the ones that are much more easily implemented in a shorter time horizon. The latter are the things that you do 20-year planning documents on. You adopt something that is going to effectuate change, if it does at all, within a generation. Sometimes it happens quicker because you open up capacity. Say you have a single family neighborhood that is the lowest of low density zoning that we have. If you were to rezone that to a multifamily, somebody's gonna buy all those single family houses and tear them down and then build apartments. If you rezone it for industrial, somebody's gonna buy all the single family houses, tear them down and build something, creative office, and there'll be another Google campus. That'll happen fast. But if what you do is take multifamily and rezone it for mixed use, or take low density multifamily and rezone it for high density multifamily, you'll get very gradual change. And that's something that happens eventually, and you have to plan for it. But in the meantime, you'll be sitting in the morning to be able to get on a bike and get to the store without having to drive through traffic on a hot day with no shade. And so we, from the city side, have to look at both of those, but the ones that you can actually see tangible results before you leave the city to go find a more affordable place to live are the stuff that you guys are talking about.
One thing that sort of, it's not really in the data is that neighborhood that you're going to, Slauson, a lot of the individuals that live along Slauson have their own businesses, they're landscapers, they depend on their vehicles to get to and from work, because that's where they work out of their homes many times, and so that's something that I'm trying to see if we're actually able to expand parking on that median next to Boulevard. So I think that's good.
We've got about 5 minutes left before they kick us out of our room here, so I don't know if there are any last minute thoughts or questions or anything, just to give us a little time frame.
Can I ask a question? The microtransit shuttle thing, is that happening?
Yeah.
March.
Where?
It
sounds very self-serving.
This is all about me, really.
Yeah, right?
Now in PDR.
sorry. It's Venice, Mar Vista, Palms, and Del Rey are the communities for the pilot.
Ooh, okay, I piloted in March. I can Google it or something.
And it'll connect to the Palm Station.
Oh, nice. That's awesome. Very cool.
When does the metro actually go to Westchester? Does it already?
That's opening in early 2020.
It's not too far away.
Yeah.
Where is it gonna end?
It goes to the airport, but there's also a station at Florence and Hickory.
Any idea if it's gonna get to the South Bay or no way?
No,
The South Bay is the dead zone of the
From
world.
the South Bay anymore ever.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Thank you. Thank you. It's people like her.
Yeah, we're
now.
I mean, the extended south.
Well, I can put my tax bill.
You don't get here.
It's gonna be beautiful.
You can't get here that way, right?
I mean, you're transferring
have to,
to
like,
different
yeah,
lines.
exactly.
Yeah, and
That's-
this is actually the big right now.
I just hate, like, I'm someone who's such a huge public transportation advocate, and I live in the worst possible place for public transportation.
With Palms.
I tried to convince my fiance to move to the Palms, like, Culver area.
Yeah,
It's awesome.
it's very accessible. That's where I live.
Yeah, but he has a thing of being, he doesn't like being east of the 405.
Yeah.
He's gonna get over that.
You don't have to go long.
It's not too far east.
Well, we want to thank you again. Really, this has been a great project for the class, and we
For me.
we will be sending you their papers when they come in
Awesome.
Monday by noon. Right?
That's fine.
Well, and I also wanted to mention two things. One, if you think, just in case you're questioning his qualifications, we're talking about bike-related infrastructure. He is wearing bike socks right now.
Now we're all gonna look at the tape.
Right?
I do find it sport to see if I can embarrass him. And two, I wish so much that I had been able to be engaged even more on this, but I do feel like I gave you a very real-world example of working for somebody who will either be all up in your business or completely unable to be. And then you have to figure out how to deliver your product, and you did. So, I mean, seriously, really good job.
Great. Well, wonderful. Thank you again for
Yeah.
your time.
Thank you.